for the double check. So excited. Yes, I'm currently driving and I don't have a car tripod thing to hold my phone up. So I'm just going to pull over and talk about why I'm so excited, which you would have already guessed from the title of this video. I didn't end up filming a get ready with me because it just didn't go to plan like I thought it would. I got interrupted and it just wasn't going to work. So I'm home now. I just went to the shops and the reason why I'm excited is because I am obviously packing up Parker's food for her to go to kindy. I've been home with this child since she's been born, so this is a huge moment for me. I'm so excited for her. She's so excited. She's like, oh, like this morning when she woke up, oh, mine go to kindy? And I was like, yeah. She goes, oh, so excited. So I'm basically going to go in there. I just got like a lunchbox and everything. She doesn't have a lunchbox. A little sandwich container box. I'm going to show you guys what I got because it's like a transition. So she actually starts kindy in February. So she has this transition. So this Monday, next Monday, and the Monday after that, she goes there for like a few hours and it gets longer each day. And then next year she'll be there like 3 days a week from like 9 to 3. So I'm so freaking excited. But yeah, she was like, am I going to be a big girl now? I was like, yeah, you are. She goes, oh, mine get older and older. I'm like, yeah. I'm so excited. I'm a bit emotional, but I'm excited. So I'm going to get inside and I'm going to start packing up a little lunchbox and show you guys what I got her. Yeah, Mum got all your food. Or she can just have fruit.
You're the tiny tables.
I'm gonna make a couple of peels. Okay?
You're tiny your cookies.
Yeah. And
cookies. That's like this one.
so I'm not sure if you guys can see. They're probably not going to let her have the tiny teddies, not sure, just because it's got traces of sesame oil or seeds or whatever in it. Got her a yogurt, so she got a yogurt, pack of tiny teddies, some strawberries and banana. So cute, going into a backpack. Hi guys. She's just going to copy what I say. We've got little Miss here wanting to be a part of it and she's just going to mimic everything I say. I had to do this video because it's like a sit down chat with me kind of video, because otherwise this vlog would be very boring because it literally just showed me, it just had me showing what I got Parker for like her first day kindy. So it's now Friday. She's like, no, Friday. It's made burgers, didn't we? We made homemade burgers.
Yeah.
Were they yum?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're really hungry. She also just had a pack of noodles, so I'm like, she's just eating so much food. Wow. This is exactly why I needed you in this video. I just told her, like, you need to be quiet while I do this, like, shush. And she goes, but I need to be like you. I'm like, okay. Okay. Have a drink. So what we're going to be sitting down talking about is going to be my experience with my first birth. So like, actually not going to be a birth vlog. It's just going to be me talking about my experience when I had Parker as my first. 20 when I had her. I was nearly 20. Well, she was born 2 days before my 21st. So basically we were kind of like, I wouldn't say we were trying for a baby, but we weren't being careful. We were kind of just like, whatever happens, happens. Goodness, if this isn't mum life, I don't know what is. Hey? Okay, so back to what I was actually talking about without being interrupted. So we were kind of just like, oh, whatever happens, happens. Didn't think it would actually like happen as quick as it did. I was only off of it from like November, and we fell pregnant that January on Australia Day. So she was conceived on Australia Day. Yeah, had her 2 days before my birthday. I'm going to talk a bit about like the symptoms that I had with her and all of that. I actually had a really good pregnancy with Parker, which was like surprising. Like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes when it's your first one, people seem to be like, oh yeah, I had such bad sickness and all this. I noticed the smell of everything had changed. So both times with my pregnancies was like smells that triggered me of certain things. when I got to about 8-9 weeks is when I started to have like morning sickness. Not necessarily in the morning all the time. It was more if I had that really burning feeling in my stomach where I needed to eat, I would like dry reach so easily. Brushing my teeth, the smell of perfume, the smell of tan, the smell of the dishwasher, basically the smell of KFC, because we live like obviously so close to KFC, the smell of KFC cooking, I would be like dry reaching. So thankfully that sickness with Parker didn't last for very long. It was literally probably about 9 weeks to 12 weeks. So it was only a couple of weeks that I was like that, and I just felt so lethargic, so tired. Once I got past that 12-week mark, like I was fine. I was still working 2 to 3 jobs. I worked up until September, like end of September, because I was due at the start of November, and I wanted to have at least like just 4 weeks, like 2 to 4 weeks where I could just have some me time, wasn't stressing about work, and just enjoy the rest of my pregnancy. Symptoms that I had throughout my whole pregnancy, I carried really well too. I didn't put much weight on apart from like my belly. I was literally just all belly. I was very like active still through the pregnancy because I didn't have like a bad pregnancy. Wanted to find out exactly what we were having because it was our first one. We wanted to know, we were too excited. And I just remember when I found out, like I was literally on the phone to my friend. I was like, I don't know, I just took a test because, okay, I didn't even mention this. Like, so I was 4 days late with my period. Yeah, keep in mind, I went off the pill November. I found out that I was pregnant in March because I conceived in January. So March, and I had gone out in February. I was doing Jaeger shots. I was drinking like so silly. So I didn't think that I would conceive so easily. A few months. So that February was going to be like my last kind of night out. And yeah, little did I know I was carrying a human in my belly. So when I got to about 20 weeks, we got to find out the sex of the baby. And I always wanted a boy. Like from day one, I've always wanted a boy. And I just knew deep down, I was like, it's going to be a girl. It just makes sense to have a girl. Anyways, I was laying there and I remember the lady was like, oh, do you want to know sex? And I was like, yep. And she was about to find it. And just before she said it, I went, it's a girl. And she was like, oh, okay, we'll see about that. And then she looked and she goes, yeah, you're having a girl. And I was like, oh my God. Considering all I wanted was a boy, as soon as I found out I was having a girl, I was like, oh my God, I'm having a little mini me, like, so cute. I was at work and I just had this gut feeling. I was like, I'm 4 days late with my period, like that's irregular. Like my cycles have always been really like on track, even when I was on the pill and even when I got off the pill. It's like I'm 4 days late. And took a test. I came home in between my jobs. So I finished work from morning to lunch at one job, came home for about an hour and a half, and then I had to get ready to go to another job. And I took a test and I was like, I probably shouldn't have done this because I have to go to work. And if I am like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to keep my mouth shut. And I called up my friend and I was like, oh, I just weed on it. But I'm not sure, like there is like a faint line, but I don't know what that means. She goes, there's a faint line. And I was like, yeah, and I sent her a photo. And she was like, there's a second line there, faint. I was like, yeah, I don't know, it's just like a faint line. And then I looked on the box and it kind of took a bit for me to understand. And I was like, looking at the box and I was looking at the test and I was like, you are pregnant. Then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God. And she goes, and she was like, you're pregnant. I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? Like, it was like as if it came out of nowhere, even though already like I knew that was possible, but I did not expect it to happen so quickly. I remember just literally crying because I was so excited, and I was just like, oh my God, like as if this is actually happening. This is all I've ever wanted. Like I was so excited. Then I had to calm my shit and go back to work. I remember before I went back to work, I like tried to call up mum, tried to call up Nick, tried to call up basically everyone who was like close to me. No one answered, and I was like, well, this is shit, because I was in such a high vibe. I was like, oh my God, it's hotel. I went around and my stepsister was home and I had the test and she answered. She goes, hi, like, what are you doing here? Like, I'm pregnant. Ignore that like wobbly arm bit, but I was like, I'm pregnant. I was like shaking it around and she was like, dude, stop flapping it around, your piss is gonna go. Not that it would, because like obviously lid was on it, but just it was like the funniest thing ever. And then she was like, wait, oh my God. And it was just like a very surreal moment. So yeah, it was very exciting. But yeah, really the only symptoms that I had was I got really bad indigestion at the end of my pregnancy. Morning sickness for a couple of weeks. I ended up getting a UTI, which I used to get as a kid anyways. Didn't feel as painful as it usually did, and they said that sometimes pregnant women don't even realize that they've got a UTI. Already so uncomfortable down there and everything's changing, you just don't even really think about it. But I was having cramping, so I was freaking out, and then I went and like did a wee test and everything. They just said, oh, you've just got a UTI, like here's some antibiotics and stuff to go on to help it. Yeah, I had those antibiotics, and then after that got out the shower, and I remember just feeling really uncomfortable, itchy, and I was like, oh my god, what the hell? Never experienced it in my life. And then I went to the mirror, and this is probably TMI, but if you're a girl or if you've been pregnant, you probably have done the same thing. I sat in front of the mirror, I looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, there is something wrong with my hoo-ha. What? Ringing up my midwife, going like, something's wrong with it. It's like a real deep red, like so sore, and I know that there's obviously pressure down there because this was near the end of my pregnancy as well. I was over 30 weeks at this point, and I thought maybe it's just because she's engaged and like there's a lot of pressure down there. So I was like very concerned, and I was like, this is not normal. And I remember I showed Nick, and Nick goes, it looks fine. And I was like, if you think that looks fine, if you think that's normal, that is not normal. My has never looked like that in my life. So anyways, they were basically like, because you've been on antibiotics, obviously it's like played around with your hormones and like dried you out and all this sort of stuff. So it could possibly be like a yeast infection. And every time I had heard the word yeast infection, like it was like the grossest thing that you could have through high school and all this stuff. Googled it, and I was like, oh my god, I don't have that. Itchy and red, that was it. I didn't have anything else. The doctors, they were like, yeah, so now you have to have this cream and do this because you have the early stages of it. So luckily you came in. I'm literally just having the realization that I'm talking about this on the internet, but so I went and got cream. I had to go to work, and I worked in retail, and I couldn't fit my pants anymore, so I had to wear a skirt, but you weren't allowed to just wear a skirt. You had to have stockings underneath the skirt. Oh, I feel like I need to burp, but I don't know how to burp. I was so uncomfortable. I was like, I don't want to come into work. And they're like, well, you have to come into work. We don't have anyone else to cover your shift. And I was like, I'm so uncomfortable. So I like lathered up. I basically put a pad on, lathered this freaking cream shit on me. It's like I had to go in there to get, it was so funny because I went to the chemist. I was like, hey, I need the antibiotics for the UTI. And then it was like, hey, I need antibiotics for the infection, like from the fucking, what do you call it? Antibiotics. So it was kind of like I was in there twice within 2 weeks. So it was so uncomfortable at work. And I'm like, every time I had to serve people, I had to obviously go to checkout, and then I'd have to go around the shelves, and then I had to squat down to like face up all the stock and then stock the shelves, and like just getting up and down. My stockings kept like dropping and going down. Then I had to pull them up over my belly, and then I had to pull my skirt back up over my belly, and it was just like so irritating. You know, I wasn't allowed, all I wanted to do was sit on the toilet or just have a shower because I just felt like so gross. So that's probably the worst experience that I had with Parker's pregnancy, was just that. It came to the actual labor. This is a whole different story. I didn't expect that I could do what I did. Like it's actually so traumatic. So I went overdue with her by 6 days overdue, basically a week. I had a bit of cramping, all of that for like a couple days, and they were holding and stuff. So my indication was that like I was having pre-labor like contractions, but they obviously weren't strong enough for me to be like, oh my god, I need to go to hospital. For probably 2 days before I actually went into active labor. So when people say, how long was your labor for? My active labor was 5 hours, and they're like, oh my god, you're so lucky. I'm like, my active labor was 5 hours. I was still in labor for like 2 days before that. So I was very uncomfortable and very tired. But my active labor was only 5 hours. But anywho, I remember sitting on the step, and my grandma was like, are you sure you're not in labor? Because I'd be sitting there, I'm like, da. She was like, are you sure you're not in labor? I'm like, I don't know. I'll know eventually. There's no point going to get checked, you know. That was my attitude. Like, I didn't want to know about any of the equipment there. I didn't care about knowing anything. I was like, I'm going into this blindsided, because at the end of the day, I could have a plan written out and it could go completely opposite. So I didn't have any plan in place. I didn't want any pain relief. I ended up going into proper labor, and we went to the hospital for me to like go get checked. So the midwives and stuff were quite shocked at how laid back I was. They're like, you're a little bit too calm. You're a little bit too chilled considering this is your first baby, right? So went to the doctor's hospital, got checked. My contractions were only like 2 minutes apart, so they weren't like heaps far apart, but they weren't close together, holding for about 30 to 40 seconds. Went and got checked, and they were like, you're only 2 centimeters dilated. We can't keep you unless you're over 3 centimeters dilated. And I'm like, what? I live basically half an hour away. So it was like an hour if I went home, and then like to go back, it would have been like an hour. They ended up sending me home, and my mum said to them, if she's anything like me and her waters break, that baby's coming out literally within 0.3 seconds. So yeah, they started getting stronger when we left. So when I got home, I said to my mum, I said to Nick, you guys may as well just go to sleep because you can't do anything. I'm very, very uncomfortable. We ran out of hot water at our house, so I didn't have the luxury of a hot bath or a hot shower during this labor. My exercising ball and a heat pack. I didn't even have any Panadol because I knew it wasn't going to do anything. So they both went to sleep, and I was literally in this like position where I am right now. The bed's behind, so I was like on my ball, and I was just leaning over the bed, like breathing through my contractions, because that's all I thought like would help it, like rather than going against the pain, just breathe through the pain. And I remember I kept reminding myself, like, this is good, more progress, like you're going to have your baby. Like my mindset was just so good. They were both asleep. After the hospital, we came home, and it would have been only 4 hours later, I reckon. About 4 hours later, I was getting such intense contractions. Like I couldn't even make it from the bedroom to the kitchen to heat up my heat pack without having a really bad contraction. So I was going back and forth, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I can't do it. So I was getting these like minute contractions that was so strong for like, you know, they might have only been 20 seconds apart, like really intense. Like I would get a breather and I'd be like that, and then all of a sudden I was like, ooh, and like breathing, and then I started like grunting. It was like I knew this baby, my waters are about to break and this baby's about to come out. And then I got to a point where I was like, I just felt, you know, when you're about to have the shits and you're like, I need to go to the toilet. That's the sensation that I had, and I felt like I just needed to push. And so I went to the toilet. And I just sat on there, and I remember I got this one contraction, and I was literally going from like, ooh, to like a, like that. That is literally the sound that I made with both pregnancies when I was about to give birth. It's like it went from breathing to literally grunting to like pushing. And by the time I'd got off the toilet, come back, laid in bed, I had my legs elevated up as if I was about to give birth. And I remember I got my next contraction, and my water, I felt like a pop, and my waters just went like, and I was like, boom, and I whacked Nick, and I was like, my waters just broke. And he woke up and he was like, what, are you sure you didn't just piss yourself? I'm like, oh my God, if you were awake like through this whole time, you would know that this is my waters. And I remember like through it, I said to him like, we need to go to the hospital, because I started feeling really, really sick from how intense the contractions were getting. And I was doing this for 5 hours like by myself. And he was like, you're doing great, babe. And I was like, you're not even awake right now, like you're literally asleep. Anyways, he like flipped out of bed. He went to go ring up mum, and he forgot mum was in the spare room, and he heard mum's phone ringing, and he ran in and turned on the light, and he was like, tan, Dana's about, like her waters just broke. And apparently my mum literally like flipped out of bed, like backflip. You know how people like backflip onto their feet? She like did that out of bed, and she actually ended up hurting herself. She came in, and I remember she was like rubbing my head. She's like, are you okay? Can you walk? And I looked at her and I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared. So yeah, after that, mum's like, can you walk? And I remember just going, I'm so scared, like, because it's like my brain had clicked and realized like, you're about to give birth. Like, what is this? Like, you've never experienced this much pain in your life. I just remember going, oh my God, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. I'm like, but I'm about to have a baby. This is the most exciting thing ever. And Nick had to carry me to the car because I tried to stand up and I was like, Mum, if I stand up, this baby's coming out like right now. Like, I just needed to push. And I said to Mum, I need to push. She's like, don't push yet. Like, every contraction I got, it was like, no, this is no longer breathing. This is like go time, pushing, let's go. When we got to the hospital, I was literally like trying not to give birth in the car. To be honest, I think my body was in shock because there's bits and pieces that I don't really remember. And anyways, we got to the hospital and they're like, okay, like just walk on in. And Nick was like, you guys don't understand, she can't walk. Like, I had to carry her to the car. It has been half an hour. Get a wheelchair. So they came to the car and looked at me and they went straight away, oh yeah, nah, she needs a wheelchair. A wheelchair, not even a wheelchair where I could put my feet down. So I had to literally hold my legs up while breathing through contractions, leaning back in this wheelchair like, oh my God, I'm about to give birth. They checked me and they were just like, you're like about ready to go, but there was a bit of a bubble where my waters hadn't fully broken, so they had to break that. Literally, I was there to give birth and within 20 minutes she was out. When you get your next contraction, hold it, push. So I remember I was just like listening to them and I was like, okay, and it was fine. And then they were like, okay, Dana, you're about to really feel a burn, like it's really going to start to burn in a minute. And I was like, don't fucking tell me that. It got to this one point where after my pushes, I like screamed and I just looked at them like, I physically cannot push anymore because if I push, like my whole entire body is just going to split in half. Like, I remember it stung so bad. Even a burn with Parker, it was like a stinging sensation that I was like, I cannot physically push anymore. I need a drink because I get very enthusiastic when I tell my story. I literally just dribbled it on me and I have fake tan, so that's great. I'm probably going to have like marks now. And I just remember thinking in my head, it can't get any more painful than this. And I was like, it's nearly over. They had to cut me because they started to like lose her heart rate. She just wasn't coming out. Like her head and she had a little head, but she was just not coming out. And I watched back the birthing vlog and I looked, I'm like, now I know why they cut me, because you can literally see it didn't matter how much I pushed. It was just like this really tight skin that would just not budge. Even when they tried to help, like it just would not budge. So they had to cut me, which I wasn't even numb for because they didn't have time to wait for it to be numb. And like Nick was fine watching through the whole birth, apart from the fact that it was really early in the morning. He had that much coffee that he felt so sick. So he was just dripping in sweat and he had to actually go out, otherwise he was going to faint. Came back in obviously, and he said the one part that made my balls go up into my stomach is when I seen them cut you. Straight away he was like, oh my God, like what the hell. In that video when they cut me, you could hear that's where I like screamed. A head coming out, and Nick's like, no, they actually had to cut you, otherwise she wasn't coming out. Once they did that, my next push, she started to come out, and then my next push, she just kind of went like straight out. And that I kind of had with my actual birth, it was just the fact that we needed to get her out then and there because they weren't sure what her heart rate was like. And she was like purple when she came out. When I got her put onto me, I looked and I was just like, I did it. Like, it's like the most memorable moment that you can have is like going through something like that with the person that you've chosen to have a child with. Whole different experience. I remember just being so proud of myself, and as soon as I got her on me, like I just felt nothing, like all the pain went away. I would do a part 2 on Orchard's birth because that was a totally different experience. And after I had her, I was in a lot of pain. It's like, you know how people say when you have your baby, like all the pain's gone once you have them. I had that experience with Parker, but not with Orchard. I completely forgot to mention that I didn't end up having any pain relief at all because I literally got there, needed to push her out, and that's what happened. Been there for 2 nights. So yeah, 2 nights. Well, basically she was born at 7 a.m. that morning. So we stayed there that night, and then we stayed there one more night, and then we left after that because all we wanted to do was get home, and we just wanted to like, you know, just take her home and be comfortable and all of that. She was only 7 pound 1 and 52 centimeters long. So she was long. She had these long little frog legs and like long feet, and whereas Orchard was completely opposite. So that's probably why I was in so much pain after having her. But yeah, and then we got home and we had the Christmas tree up, so we laid her in a bassinet underneath the Christmas tree. And I remember it just being such a surreal feeling. Like, I just broke down crying when I got home. Like, oh my God, like 2 days ago, I was literally here having contractions, like being so scared. And now she's here in our home and like this is our reality. It's such a weird feeling. I like looked at our bedroom and everything because obviously we had to change the sheets and mattress protector and everything because my waters had broken in the bed. And it made me so emotional because I was like, you know, when you don't want to really get rid of something even though you know you need to because it's like it just holds a place in your heart. That's kind of how I felt with like the bed sheets. Like they freaking stunk because she had pooed in my belly when my waters broke, so they did have that different sort of color. But I was like, but that's where my waters broke, you know, like it's such a weird feeling. Anyways, the weirdest thing for me was leaving the hospital, like just walking out. It was like I'd seen the world a whole different place. I didn't feel like I was in this world. I felt like I was felt like I was on a whole different cloud basically. And when we got home, like the next morning that we had her, and then when I started to feel a bit better and everything, we went for our first walk when I think I was about a week postpartum, so maybe 5 to 6 days I think, and then we went for a walk around the block, like a real light walk just to kind of get me out. And I remember just being so proud of myself and just thinking like, I just gave birth, like I just had a baby and now I'm pushing her in the pram. I would just stare at her for ages like, you're our little human. So yeah, some things that I didn't expect, I guess, before having a child that I didn't really know about because like I said, I kind of went into it blindsided. Obviously pushing out the placenta, I didn't think that would hurt. Like, can you just do one more push? I'm like, the fuck for? Like I've just been pushing for like past 20 minutes. 20 minutes isn't that long to be honest, but it is when you're in that much pain. And everyone was out the room and they're like, how'd you go? Like, how do you feel? I went, to be honest, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. That's what I said. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was like, I can do that again. After I had Orchard, my response was, I'm never doing that again. I also found like a whole new love for my body, like really being amazed at how I didn't gain lots of weight during my pregnancy and stuff. My skin was just stretchy and it just looked a bit bloated. And then after a week, I remember like putting on leggings and I literally looked at myself and I was like, how can that even work? Like I literally just had a baby. Going, wow, like our bodies are so amazing. And it's not just because I basically went back to normal. It's more the fact of what my body had gone through and then to see that happen as well. I was like, I just had this whole new love for my body and really wanted to nourish it as much as I could. Before becoming a mum, I was so like criticizing of my appearance. So yeah, I ended up breastfeeding for, it was like 11 months, nearly 11 and a half months to breastfeed for a year. Like a year was my goal. It got to the point where she was just not settling through the night and I was like, she's hungry, like she needs more. And I kept getting told like, no, your boobs produce as much as she needs. She was fine at eating, she ate enough food. And I was like, no, she needs more milk. Like she's literally just not sleeping through the night. And I was up probably 7 times a night. And the only time that she would go to sleep is if she was literally laying on the boob in bed with us. And to try get her down in her cot, I remember I literally had to rock her, take her off the boob, like put her down onto her belly, pat her back constantly. And then when she'd finally get to sleep, I'd go to like creep out, and we have floorboards, and then they would creak and then she'd just wake up screaming again. So yeah, listening to your mother instincts is obviously the best thing that you could ever do. Gone off my gut instinct with my kids and they've always been super happy, like obviously healthy and all of that. So breastfed her for a year. And then as soon as I gave her a bottle, so we just put her onto cow's milk. She didn't have formula. So we put her on cow's milk, and like for nighttime, she was still breastfeeding through the day. And I remember like she had slept the whole night. Like she needed more milk. So ever since then, we just gave her a bottle, put her down in a cot, and she would just go to sleep. So I think I'm just going to leave the video here because that's basically how it all went. Now she's 4 and going off to kindy, so I've been a stay-at-home mum with her since she was a baby, and it's just like such an exciting time for her and me because all she wants to do is go to kindy. I'm like, you're nearly there. So yeah, and then I'll just have Orchard home with me for like the 3 days of the week that Parker goes to kindy. So it's going to be like finally having that one-on-one time with my second child. Obviously, you don't get that when you have your first child. Yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. Guys, all have a great day or night whenever you're watching this. Bye!